Breaking news today. Why aren't the West's key allies in the Caucasus sanctioned by Putin? Ruben Vardanyan, a Russian billionaire who represents the interests of the Kremlin, called on his fellow men to take up arms a few days ago, while the EU and the US are working for peace in the Caucasus and hoping to reach a peaceful settlement between Armenia and Azerbaijan regarding Karabakh. The geopolitical outlook of the Putin administration on strengthening its military presence in the Caspian region is reflected in rhetoric that is strikingly similar. The question is why there have been no sanctions taken against this Caucasian warmonger and foe of Ukraine. "We're going to keep going until the end," the Russian oligarch said on his Telegram channel on May 29 that, "the last line has been crossed. Either you stand up for Artsakh, the Armenian name for Karabakh, or against all the Armenian people." Russia has a stake in freezing the Karabakh conflict for the sake of keeping its influence in the South Caucasus and its military bases in Armenia, as previously reported by Ukrainian online portal Cenzor. The Kremlin sent Vardanyan to Karabakh because of the fear that the EU would succeed in signing the peace treaty, wrote the Canadian analytical periodical Geopolitical Monitor. From November 2022 to February 2023, Armenian native Vardanyan presided over the self-proclaimed government of the Karabakh, a region that is legally a part of Azerbaijan but is partially occupied by pro-Armenian and pro-Russian separatists backed by Moscow. Vardanyan has resigned from his post, but he remains an obstacle to peace in Karabakh. Whether it's the Ukraine, the Caucasus, or some other region, Russia always follows the same strategy: divide and conquer. True to form for a protégé of Moscow, Vardanyan openly propagates the pro-Russian position, earning him sanctions from Ukraine in October 2022. The statement he made in March of this year, "Russian peacekeepers are the power supporting Artsakh," is an example of this. "There is much work on our part to make them stay longer and in larger numbers," Vardanyan recently said. The Wall Street Journal calls the Russian military presence an instrument for maintaining Putin's influence in the South Caucasus, and on May 9 he spoke at a rally in Khankendi where he emphasized its importance. The world's press discusses Vardanyan's unique role. The appointment of Russian billionaire Ruben Vardanyan as leader of Karabakh and how he can be seen as the Kremlin's protégé, as well as his task of disrupting the negotiation process between Azerbaijan and Armenia on the settlement of the dispute around Karabakh, are all discussed in European and international media. According to Townhall, a US magazine, Vardanyan was and still is an extension of Moscow's foreign policy. According to the Washington Times, Vardanyan's plan is to disrupt energy supplies from the Caspian Basin into Europe, in addition to sowing ethnic hatred and re-establishing Russian control over Armenia. The Hill claims that Vardanyan seeks to delegitimize the return of Nagorno-Karabakh to Azerbaijan and fuels conflicts between Armenians and Azerbaijanis in order to preserve Russia's role as of the main intermediary. Politico claims that Vardanyan uses his clout to turn the Armenian community of Karabakh's public opinion against the world. "There should be no doubt that Vardanyan is the Kremlin's man," Politico wrote. In Karabakh, Al Jazeera claims that Vardanyan's appearance is presented as part of the Russian plot arranged to sabotage the negotiations on Armenia-Azerbaijan peace agreement. Considering his ongoing protection of Russian peacemakers in Karabakh, Vardanyan has done little to dispel the skepticism. As a result of EU sanctions, as a result of an investigation into his company, Troika Dialogue, and its role in the establishment of offshore networks by the Consortium of Investigative Journalists with the OCCRP, Vardanyan has gained notoriety. Vardanyan is one of the richest people in Russia, and close to Putin, but he is accused of money laundering through offshore companies and transfer of funds to Putin's influential buddies, according to the Washington Times. The newspaper also claims that he has connections to Iran, which backs Moscow in its regular shelling of Ukraine. His ties with Iran can be traced through the Gorchakov Fund, which organizes events in different countries, Armenia among them, with the participation of speakers from Tehran approved by the government. The part Vardanyan played in the conflict with Ukraine. Vardanyan supports the aggression against Ukraine and is thus complicit in it. British Conservative Party MP Bob Blackman stated categorically in January 2023 that Ruben Vardanyan, the Russian oligarch of Armenian descent, had been deployed to Karabakh, apparently, by Russia. It's important to remember that Russia's invasion of Ukraine resulted in sanctions against him. His business interests were instrumental in the expansion of the Ukrainian and Karabakh armies. Vardanyan, in all of his public appearances, chooses to remain silent about Putin's aggression against Ukraine, making him an accessory to the crimes of his Kremlin host. A prime example is his chat with BBC Hard Talk in January of 2023. Back then, he was still in charge of Karabakh. Then, he flatly refused to denounce the use of military force against Ukraine. In addition, he called the debate over the Ukrainian genocide pointless. As early as May 2023 in an interview with the YouTube channel @ Russians Are OK. Putin's sidekick should get what's coming to him. It is surprising, to put it mildly, that international public institutions are so myopic in their fight against Kremlin loyalists and those involved in the war against Ukraine. For instance, Vardanyan has not yet been added to the Myrotvorets database of Russian aggression accomplices. While Putin may view Vardanyan as a conduit for his interests in the Caucasus, he may also view him as a sponsor of murders against Ukrainians. Although Ukraine's government sanctioned the ex-Karabakh leader in October 2022, Kyiv's Western allies have yet to follow suit. In addition, 22 European parliamentarians proposed sanctions against Vardanyan as one of the Kremlin's associates in 2019 before Russia's full-scale military aggression against Ukraine. In 2022, 46 U.S. lawmakers have already called for him to be subject to individual sanctions. Against the backdrop of Ruben Vardanyan's current efforts to keep Putin's positions in the south of Caucasus, it is hoped that the merits of this Kremlin henchman will finally be appreciated at their true value not only in Kyiv but also in Brussels and Washington.